Welcome to Mobile Media. This is David Tricchetti from 21 Communications. Our guest today is Alvin Graylin of M-Info. Alvin's going to tell us a bit more about his company. And Alvin, could you just take a few minutes to introduce yourself?
Sure. I was born in China and left here when I was 9 and grew up in the States, went to college in the States, started out with IBM, then went to Intel for a number of years. Actually came and started up Shanghai office for Intel back in 94 to 97 and grew the consumer business here. And then went back to the States, did a couple of startups, then went to Taiwan for a couple of years, then went back to the States again, and then now I'm back for the third time in China, running the leading mobile search service in China. So we're the only multi-transport mobile search company in China, which means that we do SMS, we do WAP, we do Instant Messenger, and we also do on-phone Java applications. So essentially anybody on a cell phone in China can access our service, unlike most of the other so-called mobile search companies out there who are mainly focused on WAP, which is one portion of the population.
So just for people out there who may not be familiar with mobile search, to a consumer, how exactly does it work?
So essentially, well, our search is a little bit different than the average mobile search.
Okay.
For mobile search, when people, for other companies, it's very similar to desktop search, where you put in the keyword, you get a bunch of links back, and then you click on the links and try to find something you're interested in. With the M-Info model, what we found is that end users are not particularly happy with the user experience of having to click on a number of links and then not finding what they're looking for. They get very impatient. So what we focused on is to understand what they're looking for and then bring them the answers versus giving them a number of irrelevant links.
So for example, what are some of the most common things that people here in China search for over their mobile phone?
Yeah, we actually just recently released a report a couple weeks ago about what people search for on mobile in 2006, and some of the most popular topics were, I guess, local search, which is looking for restaurants and bars and ATMs and banks and things like that, and then informational search, such as looking for weather, for news, sports scores, train schedules. And then also another popular area is content search, looking for things like ringtones, games, pictures. So depending on the age group of the user, they seem to gravitate towards one of those groups of contents.
Okay. So in terms of advertising, which is an interest of mine, being with 21 Communications, what opportunities are there for like brand marketers and let's say airlines or an FMCG brand to market within the mobile search service?
Yeah, actually mobile is probably one of the best medium for advertising to users because it's the perfect way to do the one-to-one communication that you can't do through any other medium. Right? It's the only device where there's a single person uniquely identified to a particular number or address. You can't do that on the computer because usually there's multiple people sharing a computer, or one person could be using multiple computers. On TV, on radio, it's a mass medium. But this is the only medium where you know who this person is, they're a real person, and in fact, sometimes what their background is. What model of phone they have, sometimes the amount of spending that they've done on their cell phones. And if you, like us, keep a profile of all the user search history, you can actually tell what interests they have. So do they like to go to 5-star restaurants? Do they fly between Beijing and Shanghai often? Do they like to check on stocks? And by looking at these behavior, you can very clearly understand who they are, what they're interested in, and target the advertising to their interests. And that takes away the sense of advertising. It's really more information that's relevant.
So you know all this about the people who use the mobile search service?
Yeah, so the more people use our service, the more we know about them, and the better we can target our advertising.
Interesting. So this mobile search business must be somewhat reliant on like China Mobile and China Unicom. How important is the operator in the value chain?
I think in any mobile-related service, the operator is a critical piece of that business because it's the last mile. It's what connects you to the user. Particularly in China, where there's really two major mobile carriers. There's actually four, but there's only two that matter. And then there's really only one that controls everything, which is China Mobile, which has about 65% market share.
Right.
So they're fairly influential in terms of setting the overall policies around communication to their users, around collection of fees, around marketing policies. So there's a lot of control from the carriers here. Hopefully, in the next couple years, as the landline carriers get into the mobile space through their 3G licenses, there will be a little bit less monopoly power from China Mobile and help to create a little more fair playing field between the carriers and also for the content providers and the media platform providers.
Great. And just in terms of market scale, could you tell us, approximately how many people are using the service, or the potential market and
So there's
growth?
I think there's been a few studies that's come out in the last couple of years about what the overall China, mobile search space is. I think the iResearch numbers were somewhere around 35 million users last year, and Yankee Group also came up with fairly similar numbers. But it's projected to go to in the order of 200 to 300 million users for mobile search within the next 3-4 years.
Wow.
So that's tremendous growth over this period, and it's actually fairly, it's probably even understated, because if you think about it, right now on desktop, about 80 to 85% of users who use computers on desktop use search on desktop. And 200 to 300 million users in 3 years really only represents probably about 40% of the total mobile population. So from that perspective, there's probably even more upside.
Interesting. How about in terms of the future, where the industry is heading? We have 3G licenses likely being issued this year. Mobile payment maybe being tied in. How does that impact your business and the industry?
I think 3G, if anything, it just makes the need for mobile search more, more critical, because it'll probably create an increase in creation of content and of rich content on the internet, or on the mobile internet, which means that people need to find that information.
Right.
So, and on a small screen that you have with a mobile, it's probably even more important to have a quality search product, because you can't list out 20, 30 things on a page.
Right.
It's got to be right, and it's got to be quick. So
right.
3G will help with that. But for some of the informational search things that we provide, things like trying to find a restaurant or trying to find the weather, the 3G really doesn't impact it too much.
How about mobile payment?
I think mobile payment's been talked about for a long time,
Yeah,
and people have been hoping that to be a real killer application. But it's going to probably take a little bit longer than most people expect to have that work in China, because of the heavy regulation in the financial industry here.
Mm-hmm.
So micropayments, things that are a few RMB, that's probably will happen faster. But to say, instead of carrying a credit card, I'll just take my phone and use that to pay for my hotel or pay for my airline ticket, that's probably still quite a bit away.
Is mobile payment being used at all in China today?
There's a few vendors that are startups in the space,
right.
but I think not to any real significant scale. I mean, there's mobile payment in the sense of buying ringtones and buying games, but not in the sense of real offline payments. There's a few companies doing things like paying for your electric bill, or paying, that kind of stuff. But
it's fairly limited.
Fairly limited in scope. Yeah.
Okay. I guess when any of us think of search, one word comes to mind, which is Google.
Yes.
So, could you talk a little bit about Google's impact on the mobile industry, where they stand in terms of, what you know of their plans for mobile? And, it seems like there's been a spate of acquisitions, especially over the past year, since Google's IPO. Could you comment a bit on Google?
Sure. I think Google is actually doing quite well in the mobile search space in the U.S. They're probably the leading provider, maybe 35-40% market share according to some research numbers. But in China, they're really just getting started. They recently announced that they're doing a cooperation with China Mobile to deliver on-deck search, which means that you can find ringtones and pictures on the Mounternet system.
Okay.
But Mounternet, only accounts for probably about 10% of the traffic in the China WAP service, and then the WAP is only again a portion of the total population of mobile users. So that impact is fairly limited, and it's only for content. It's only for rich content, not for real information, not for off-deck. In a way, China Mobile is right now trying to limit people from going off-deck. So having a search service that takes them off deck would be actually against their policies.
Interesting.
So from that perspective, I think that particular deal is fairly limited in impact. That may change over time,
Right.
but that's the case right now. Additionally, they have fairly limited resources in China working on this deal. In fact, from what I understand, most or almost all of their developers on the mobile-related cooperation with China Mobile sit in Mountain View. So,
Interesting.
So I think there's been a lot more PR than there has been reality.
Yeah. How about the future for M-Info? Could you tell us a little bit about where the company's going, how the industry's changing, your vision for China and beyond, if that's the case?
Sure. Well, I think M-Info is in a pretty good position for our industry right now. There's in the Chinese mobile search market, there's really no dominant leader, not like there is on the desktop. So it's really going into a new medium where there's an open space for us to go and take that leadership. And right now, from a technology perspective, from a content perspective, from a usability perspective, there's really no other player that can compete with us. So we feel like if we execute the way we want to over the next year, by the time 2008 comes around, we will be that dominant player in this space. And as we all know from almost any industry, the top 1-2 players will take the majority of the value from that industry. And I feel very confident that we'll be one of those top 2 players. So,
Great.
Yeah.
Look forward to it. Well, thanks for being on our show today.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into iTV-Asia. This has been Mobile Media. My name is David Turchetti. Our guest today is Alvin Wong Graylin of M-Info. And thanks, Alvin.
Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks.